Hi everyone, welcome back to another channel and another episode of Cosmic Ways. And today I'm going to be talking about the present month of August. What are some of the important transits going on? Some of the eclipses that are occurring this month, which includes both the solar and the lunar eclipse, and essentially how do we navigate this kind of energy, tune ourselves, as I mentioned before, to the forces of the universe, to the planets, align ourselves with the goals they have in mind for us, and just be prepared for some of the most intense, transformative, and pivot point celestial events of the season. So tomorrow marks a massive solar eclipse. And what I want to dive into is the deep cosmic mechanics. I want you to understand the macro picture of what is taking place right now. This eclipse is historically and karmically very significant because it marks the final eclipses occurring in the signs of the Leo-Aquarius nodal axis before the North Node and the South Node make the impending transition into Cancer and Capricorn respectively. So for the past year and a half, the universe has been asking us to balance personal identity, ego, and some of the creative expressions with the collective sign of Aquarius, networking, and essentially the future. So tomorrow's eclipse acts as the final punctuation mark, the closing chapter of this unique karmic lesson. What makes tomorrow so ordinary isn't just that it's an eclipse, it's the sheer concentration of planetary weight. The nakshatra, the constellation it is taking place in, is the hidden slate of Jupiter and a powerful aspect from Pluto that is going to force a complete internal reinvention. So essentially, what I want to direct everyone to is the stellium of planets that is forming right now in the sign of Cancer. So we have the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, and Exalted Combust Jupiter, and it is directly being opposed by Pluto. So let's look at the sky map for the eclipse. We don't just have Sun, Moon, coming together in Cancer. So we have this massive, potent four-planet stellium. And as I mentioned, the Sun and the Moon are joined by Mercury and Jupiter. Now, Cancer is a sign of the heart, the home, our psychological roots, the mothering energy, and our emotional security. Emotional intelligence. So having all these four key planets sitting here creates an absolute pressure cooker of intuitive intelligence, mental activity, and expansion. But here is where the intensity skyrockets. Pluto sits directly opposite this eclipse cluster. So Pluto, as I discussed before, is a planet of death and rebirth, deep psychological excavation, and irreversible transformation. So when Pluto aspects or opposes eclipse planets, it acts like a cosmic X-ray machine. It doesn't allow superficial answers or band-aids. Pluto strips away illusions, exposing buried power dynamics, hidden motives, and subconscious patterns. So because Pluto is staring right into this Cancer stellium, tomorrow's eclipse is forcing us to confront where we have built emotional structures out of fear rather than authentic truth. It is demanding a somewhat complete purging of emotional baggage so that true transformation can actually happen. Somewhat of like a clearing of the air before the new events or the new kind of processes in our lives kick off. So we also want to put the perspective against the combustion of Jupiter in the constellation and the eclipse happening in the constellation of Ashlesha. So let's talk a little bit about Jupiter, because its role in this transit is extremely fascinating. As I mentioned in my last video, Jupiter is currently in a sign of ultimate exaltation in Cancer. It has been transiting through this deeply auspicious, nurturing constellation of Pushya. However, and this is really critical for the past few weeks and right through the next few days, Jupiter is combust the Sun. So what this translates into is that even though Jupiter holds incredible inherent strength and wisdom right now, its direct external power and outer light are obscured by the Sun's blinding gaze. It cannot project its usual outward optimism or quick expansion. And what does a combust but exalted planet tell us? It tells us that we must wait out this period very quietly. We cannot force outward growth right now. The universe is intentionally turning Jupiter's wisdom inward. So this kind of ties directly into the constellation of tomorrow's eclipse, which is the constellation of Ashlesha, which is ruled by the planet Mercury. Ashlesha is very interesting because it's symbolized by the coiled serpent, which is governed by the Nagas or the serpent gods. Its energy is deeply hypnotic, strategic, intuitive, and very primal. But Ashlesha is also associated with the staff, the caduceus, the emblem of medicine and healing. Think about how anti-venom works. Sometimes to heal a deep, festering wound that won't go away on its own, you have to ingest or process a tiny bit of poison. Ashlesha's serpent energy forces deep-seated shadow emotions to surface. Jealousy, insecurity, possessiveness, or even attachment, which is exaggerated. So because Jupiter is combust and turning us inward, the universe is asking us not to run from these shadow feelings. Be very vigilant. Be hyper self-aware. Do the inner shadow work. The poison that comes up right now is actually the real antidote, the medicine required to heal your emotional foundation and uncover some of your most authentic truths lying deep within you. So, if this is all making sense to you, there is a little bit to be mentioned about the owner of the constellation, which is Mercury. And Mercury is a very cold, calculating, and logical planet. So to understand why this shadow work is coming up so strongly in August, we have to look at the ruler of Ashlesha, as I mentioned, and it's basically under strain right now. And the reason I say that Mercury is also strained is for Ashlesha to function smoothly, its ruler needs strength. And the ruler, being Mercury, has two major planets transiting its signs this month, and they are in a deeply compromised position. So Mars is in Gemini. Mars is the planet of raw action, of conflict, and it's transiting Gemini, a sign which is ruled by Mercury. Mars does not like Gemini. Mars wants direct action, but Gemini forces it to overthink, to argue, to analyze, and scatter its drive into a million directions. This causes mental restlessness and verbal friction. On top of this, we have a debilitated Venus in Virgo. Venus sitting in Virgo is its sign of extreme debilitation. Virgo is hyper-analytical and detail-oriented. Venus, which wants grace, it wants romance, surrender, feels slightly suffocated here. It brings hypercriticism in relationships and anxiety over perfection. Because both Mars and Venus are struggling in Mercury's territory, Mercury itself is kind of weighed down. Furthermore, Mercury sits in Cancer, and there's an old mythological tension here where the moon accepts Mercury, but Mercury does not like the moon. So Mercury represents cold, transaction-based logic, business, rationality, and the moon represents the more fluid emotions and psychological memory. So when Mercury sits in emotional Cancer during an eclipse, logic drowns in feeling. The universe is telling us to throw out our old, rigid spreadsheets of logic. It is asking, does your logical path actually make emotional sense? Does your current strategy honor your home, your peace of mind, and your emotional security? It is asking for a complete reinvention of our own internal logic. So the next equation that comes into the picture is Saturn sitting in Pisces and Neptune rewriting the past. So when we zoom out to another critical transit shaping August, while all this emotional heat is concentrated in Cancer, Saturn is sitting in the sign of Pisces. Pisces is a sign ruled by Jupiter. So Saturn is effectively sitting in Jupiter's house, while Jupiter is exalted but combust in Cancer. What does this really mean or translate into? So having a heavy, disciplined, realistic Saturn transiting to the normally optimistic and the dreamy waters of Pisces means we cannot just hide in spiritual escapism. Saturn in Pisces tells us to buckle down, take care of our daily duties, and honor our real world responsibilities. At the same time, however, let's not forget that Neptune in Pisces has been in a close, harmonious trine to Jupiter in the last few weeks. And basically, what this dissolves into is that Neptune is dissolving some of these boundaries and connecting us to higher dimensions and alternative realities. So as Saturn retrogrades back towards Neptune, we are given a rare power, the power to reinvent our past, to transform our present reality. This doesn't mean that we have to change history or we can change history. It means changing your relationship to your history. It means looking at past emotional wounds, reframing the narrative through Saturnian maturity, and using Neptunian's wisdom to build a raw emotional reality. The universe is funneling massive energy into Cancer right now to remind us to not look outward for security or validation. Leverage this deep emotional wave. Build a stable, authentic, and secure inner structure by doing the work inside of yourself. So I'm going to just tell you guys, some of the practical ways that I and a lot of platforms will tell you is some of the practical steps we can take to synthesize all of this for the days and the weeks ahead. Wait out the impulse. With Jupiter combust, Mars kind of restless in Gemini, and Venus debilitated, do not make drastic reactive choices right now. Let the eclipse shadow pass. Ingest the medicine of self-awareness. When uncomfortable, Ashlesha emotions arise. Insecurity, defensiveness, fear. Don't project them onto others. Sit with them. Use them as fuel for shadow work. Reinvent your logic. Align your practical goals with what actually nurtures your soul and honors your home life. Buckle down on your daily discipline. and honor that Saturnian duties in Pisces. Spiritual growth right now is found in quiet daily responsibility and inner grounding. So hopefully this was all very helpful, and I want to thank all of you for staying connected with me. But I also want to emphasize that this eclipse and the transits of August are handing us the keys to deep internal sovereignty. It might feel heavy or exposing, but Pluto, Ashlesha, and Exalted Jupiter are burning away what is artificial, what is synthetic, and what is unnecessary, so that only our authentic truth remains. Please drop a comment. How are you feeling this Cancer energy showing up in your life? And what house does Cancer occupy in your natal chart? If you resonated with this deep dive, give this video a like, share it with someone who needs this perspective, and hit subscribe with notifications turned on. Please take care of yourself, because it is a difficult energy, yet it's transformative, and it's eventually going to help all of us to be kinder to ourselves. And I will see you in the next video very soon. Thank you.